Very timely for us to have back with us today Jordan Sekulow. He's the executive director of the American Center for Law and Justice. He and his dad, Jay Sekulow, have that great ministry and outreach. And what a great time to have him with us today. Jordan, thanks. Good to see you, friend. Thanks for your time, by the way. You could be anywhere, but you always give us a few moments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Barry. Glad to be here.
So what do you think? We're in a mess, and I guess more lawsuits are going to be announced today. What's the update?
Sure. So, at a different role than the ACLJ, both my dad and I serve on President Trump's legal team. We mostly are focused on when these cases reach, in this matter, in the campaign matter, the Supreme Court of the United States. We have a stay there already on some Pennsylvania votes, on late incoming mail-in votes. And there's a stay that was issued by Justice Alito. And so we kind of watch as these are progressing, and then we kind of take it from there. But of course, we're working with the team and Mayor Giuliani and the others. So we know that there's active litigation, obviously, in Philadelphia. That case was moved over for more briefing. And that is on the motion to dismiss that the state has tried to file there. You've also got likely active litigation will be filed in Georgia today, as during this canvass, they continue to find votes and a lot of problems in the state of Georgia, which is, again, I think it's a fair time to say when the campaign and when groups like the ACLJ, when we look at too as well, the protecting your constitutional rights, the integrity of the vote. Let me just say this about Georgia. It's a state run entirely by Republicans, and it was one of the worst run elections in the whole country. It's in a state that they knew were going to, and then they have to have a different, two runoff elections on January 5th that will determine the balance of power in the U.S. Senate and whether or not we have a Republican-controlled Senate that can stop some of the more radical positions or policies of the potential Biden administration. But again, the battle continues, Perry, in court. So you got Michigan in Wayne County, the two electors the two commissioners who initially did certify the election in Wayne County have pulled that. So that we have all these states that have not yet gotten to the point where they can certify elections or feel confident in their results. And these are all the states that are what we call outcome determinative. And then there's a lawsuit in Nevada as well. In Clark County, which is the largest county in Nevada, 160,000 votes have been thrown out in Clark County for a city council race. And they said that race and those votes were so fraught with fraud that they have to throw them out. But they're still counting them for the presidential race. So there's an issue there, of course, with equal protection. So that is why I know it is complicated. You can go through the list of issues in every state, and it's different. So it's not like a Bush versus Gore scenario. And it's not a scenario anyone wanted the country to have to be in, but it is one. It's why you have the legal teams ready to fight it out. And of course, it's on a timeline, unlike most legal challenges, which can kind of take years. These are taking days and weeks.
Two things come out of this. One is the integrity of our election process, and two is, can the president still prevail? What's your take?
So one is we wouldn't be engaged in these fights if we didn't believe the president could still prevail. And ultimately, and that's been the message from the president as well to the legal team, is you keep up the fight so long as we can prevail. And that's why it's key that we're not just talking about Pennsylvania, that you have to be talking about enough states and enough issues that I'll say it again, Perry, it's outcome determinative, because the Supreme Court ultimately is holding this stay in Pennsylvania on this certain segment of votes that came in late. But they're not going to really take the case on the merits. I don't think you'll get a full ruling from the court or opinion from the court until there's enough cases there where combined, they could be outcome determinative. They could change the outcome, change the electoral makeup, and thus change the outcome of the election if they were all decided, certain ways and certain votes weren't counted. So that is part one. We would not be engaged in this battle. And part two is what you said, which is that we don't want to ever see this happen again. So our election integrity is very important, especially because in Georgia, and as conservatives, we're all watching those very carefully, whether you live in the state or not. And so is the left, by the way, getting engaged there. That is going to determine, again, does every policy get basically a Democrat pass from a U.S. Senate that could be potentially controlled by Chuck Schumer?
Yesterday, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, from Georgia, That's probably the most upset I've ever seen him. He thinks that the governor and the secretary of state in Georgia have caved, and that Abrams behind the scenes is pulling all the shenanigans and could win this thing. What's your take?
So Stacey Abrams put together this machine that a lot of people were wondering, what is she doing with this money? She didn't, she ran a campaign. She was very vocal about thinking that campaign was stolen from her. It was a close election, but she's put together all these voting efforts. I do believe this. I agree with the two senators, Senator Loeffler and Senator Perdue, that the Secretary of State in Georgia, and this is what makes us, again, a bipartisan group of the ACLJ. We're not afraid to criticize. It's not about partisanship. The Secretary of State there has failed to carry out an election, and the governor has just been hiding. Governor Kemp. I mean, I'm from Georgia. It's embarrassing to see because, again, whether or not it's pressure or just it's they're dealing with too many issues. I mean, the whole country is. And yet these states that knew they were going to be the battlegrounds, knew they were going to be focal points, knew they were going to have potential runoff elections, happened to be the ones where they didn't put the thumb drives in correctly. You've got bad statewide leadership. And what does that trickle down to? Local leaders at the county level and the precinct level don't know what to do, don't know how to move forward because they're not getting clear messages from the top. So there is a provision, and I do want to mention it, Perry, because I think it's important as we look at what's happened in Clark County, Nevada, Wayne County in Michigan, statewide in Georgia, and in Philadelphia specifically in Pennsylvania, but also in Lucerne County in Pennsylvania. There's a provision in the federal law. And it defines when a state legislature decides, you know what, the election in our state was failed. It's called a failed election. And so it didn't work. And yet we've got to move forward as a country. So we don't have a revote. We have a statewide elected state legislatures who then put in electors. And I don't think we're at that point necessarily yet. But if we continue to see failure after failure, I mean, literally where we have states admitting, Nevada and Clark County has admitted to the fraud in Clark County's vote. You could call then, this is the largest county in the state, the most votes in the state. It could be a failed election. The Congress has put this into place. And in each one of these states, it would be up to Republican state legislators to make this decision. And the law, the federal law, doesn't define what failed means. So they each have unique scenarios. And I'm not saying it's there yet, but I think that there's a reason why we have these laws.
Okay, so there's a possibility they don't certify these states that are in question.
Right.
They don't certify by the date they're supposed to certify the election. Do they then go to a re-election, or do they forfeit their electoral votes?
What they can do under the federal law is appoint electors on their own. The state legislature. And in each of these states that we're talking about are Republican controlled, including places like Michigan and Pennsylvania. They get to put in new electors, so they could decide they want all Trump electors. They can do that. I mean, that is the law. People may not like it, but if they can't certify the election, if it's been a complete failure, and we always say elections have consequences. What do you think the other side would do with this? Mm-hmm. If the Democrats were in control of, and the left was in control of these state legislatures, do you think they would have any problem utilizing the law? And so they absolutely can take advantage of that. They would not have to have new elections, not have to have a revote, and they can. That's how we can move forward as a country. That's why we have those laws in case of scenarios like this, where we have rampant problems in not just one state and one county, but in multiple states, all which happen to be the battlegrounds and the states that are most outcome determinative.
Back to Georgia just for a moment. Obama got 83+ thousand votes. Clinton got 85+ thousand votes. And here comes Biden with 840,000+ thousand votes. At the top of the ticket, but voting down the ticket, it goes Republican. Isn't that enough to open up everybody's eyes?
Yes. I mean, one of the issues here is getting past the idea that that these are conspiracy theories and just looking at the stats and looking at the numbers if they don't add up. So we knew mail-in ballots were going to be an issue and a problem. We know in Georgia there's two problems with that. One is your signature matching was a lot different if you went to go vote in person. It was very seriously done as usual. Than if you voted by mail, which was just run through a machine and it took like every signature. Same thing happened in Nevada. The signature machine wasn't working, so they just turned down the percent it had to be to match, and they all went through. This is truth. This isn't theory. This isn't just ideas people are putting forward. These are not conspiracies. This is reality, and I think that yes, it can be overwhelming to look at this kind of data, but people have got to understand that's why there are actual laws in place where you can see a problem like this and realize this is not right, and we can rectify this without figuring out every single little detail, because we don't have time to do that in our country. Our leaders knew that going back to the 1800s when laws were passed about failed elections and how to move forward and how to do it, and we have those laws in place because whether you're talking about voting machines, data that doesn't make sense, doesn't match up. In Wayne County, one of the problems in Detroit, Perry, is that the number of people who signed in to vote is way less than the number of votes in like 71% of the precincts. And this is that includes Detroit. So they can't certify it. I mean, that doesn't make sense. That's the dead people voting, or the people that shouldn't have been voting there, and those were counted votes, and they're not adding up. The numbers aren't there. But there is something you can do about it, and it's whether or not people have got, I think, the guts to do it, and then the will to do it, I think, is very important. And that we will have to see.
One last question, and again, thank you for your time, Jordan. Sidney Powell seems to be a hawk recently as it relates to the Dominion software.
Yep.
And this is a whole nother aspect of this problem. Are those concerns over that software legitimate?
Yes, absolutely. They've been legit from day one. Since the election, there have been concerns about Dominion, and it started out with the problems with the user interface. So there was issues with how easy it was for a human to cause massive error with the machine. We saw that in one small precinct in Michigan with 6,000 votes. There was a problem there, and then of course there's a problem with Dominion too, and it's, by the way, used in every state that is an issue here. And Sidney Powell is an excellent attorney. She's part of our legal team now, the President Trump's legal team. And she, just like she's been representing Mike Flynn, is gonna do everything she can with the time she's got. I mean, this is probably, as attorneys, usually time is not really against you in this way. The law is the last resort, but you have plenty of time. In this situation, of course, time is against you. And when you're talking about dealing with data, and you're talking about dealing with big tech, and you're dealing with a mainstream media that tells you that you're crazy or that you're a conspiracy theorist for wanting to look at these issues, I think this gives us the opportunity to finally look into these issues so that regardless of what the outcome is here too, this is not something that continues to happen in our country.
Thank you, Jordan. You guys are wonderful. You guys are in our prayers. I can't imagine what you guys are going through. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, go to aclj.org. Support these guys. They're frontline warriors. And, of course, you see their program all over the Dove Television Network. So check it out and then support them. aclj.org. Thank you, Jordan. God bless, pal.
Thanks, Perry. Good to see you.